Alright guys, welcome back to Will of DDT. My name is Anonymous and I'm joined here by my friends Mujinator, Bia, and Irrelevant, and we are going to be discussing a One Piece leader tier list right now. So obviously you guys know set 2 is coming up pretty soon here, and so we thought it would be the right time to go ahead and make a tier list, kind of tell you where all of your favorite leaders are going to be falling in the next set, or at least where we predict they are. Right, Mujinator, like, this is not necessarily based off of, like, what we've seen in Japan. Like, this is kind of our experience playing the sim, things like that. And,
I mean, we have a big group of guys here, and we're all kind of specialized in different colors. So what we have here is just going to be our main predictions, what we think is going to be really good in tournaments and locals, even just amongst our friend group. So, again, this is going to be a big prediction. We might be wrong, we might be correct. So we'll try to go on from here.
And for some of like the newer leaders that are coming out in set 2, I mean, there is something called the sim effect, right? Where people are just testing and trying things out. For us to talk about their competitive viability, we really do have to go off the Eastern meta, right? Like stuff that's been topping regionally, nationally, internationally. So, but again, big disclaimer, all of this is subject to change because the Western players, we're just different, right? We're built different, we play differently. It doesn't mean that it always translates 100%. So we're just going to have fun with this, but at the same time give you our reasoning so you guys can take this information and invest in the leaders you want to.
Yeah, and before we begin, like we should mention that this is a tier list of the decks themselves that the leaders are piloting, not necessarily a leader tier list in a vacuum.
right, exactly. You got to take into context what cards are out, right? Like a lot of us, we had some hot takes on some of these leaders, but when you consider some of the events that they come with, some of the higher top end that they come with, I mean, it really, really makes a difference in how the deck plays. So, all right, guys, without further ado, let's get right into it. We're just going to be going down these leaders one by one. And, first up, we've got Zoro. So, do we even think S tier is high enough for this, guys?
Give him his own tier.
Yeah, get the easy stuff out of the way.
I think this is an easy Zoro tier.
Yeah.
We've got the Zoro tier for Zoro. He's just that high, guys. I mean, this deck becomes absolutely crazy. A lot of the red stuff coming out for Whitebeard is gonna benefit Zoro even more. Bia, you're kind of our player who's really familiar with those cards. So what?
So I mean, like it's very easy to say. I mean, this deck was already strong in set 1
For sure.
I mean, again, it wasn't the best league. I mean, Luffy was well and above. He's proven top in treasure cups, top in locals, but Zoro was right there hitting top 8s. It's just such a consistent package. I mean, buff everything by 1k. Come on, that's just easy.
So
and then
easy.
you add cards into set 2 that make it even more viable. You have Makiko coming out in set 2 that buffs up level 1 vanillas.
That is insane.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah,
and then you have Vista. You have Whitebeard the character.
Right.
This card is an absolute unit on its own.
Yeah.
Right. So Zoro is just going to be that card, and I think what classified it as being S tier or maybe even 0 tier, 0 Zoro,
Sure.
is how consistent it's going to be able to do what it wants to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
I think that's what made decks like Kid strong this format.
For sure.
I think that's what Zoro's going to be able to take and run with next format.
Yeah, I think something that we'll be noticing, or a pattern that we'll be noticing in this tier list, is the more consistent a deck is able to do what it wants to do is definitely going to be ranking it higher on the tier list. So Zoro, like Bia was saying, the fact that it's just so consistent, even more so than the other decks, it just definitely puts it at its own tier.
Right. And, I mean, like you said, it's just an example of a deck that got better. I mean, like you were talking about, the Makino package. I mean, Zoro's already swinging with those one-cost Nabis, right? We have so much one-cost support. We have Curly Dedan, we've got Makino, we've got that other guy who buffs a one-cost when he's played. Zoro's just, all your units are swinging for high numbers. The little guys who were already swinging before are just doing so with more confidence now. So it's a really high deck. All right, so next up, guys, we have Law. So Law is kind of an interesting leader. I personally think he falls under A tier, and I would say that he's fallen a little bit since maybe his prevalence in the first set. But I'm curious, like what you guys have to say about that.
I mean, as a purple player, I start salivating at the mouth whenever I see a red green law player.
For
just
sure.
because anything that they play is going to be a target for me.
Right.
Who's who? King. Especially the 7-drop king. I can just wipe your board out, and then you're going to keep building up the board because that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Once you build up that board, 10-drop Kaido comes out.
And I think what set 2 is introducing is a lot more removal in purple and in black.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So a meta that's producing a lot more removal and making it harder for Law to keep that 5-body board.
Right.
Not to say that I think A tier for Law is still great, and that's a testament to the leader and the deck that it can still be in contention for winning and topping
For
in a
sure.
meta that's against it.
For sure,
Right.
exactly. I think I think you put it the best. Yeah, I'm a law player myself, and the thing about law is that it just gets, as the game goes on, you can only imagine that there's going to be more removal for the low end units, right? And as there's more removal for low cost, law is just going to get worse. But then as red and green get better, law is going to get better, right? So like you have the whole 1-cost package now. You have Makino, you have Curly Dadan, again, some of the same things we were just talking about that benefit Zoro, they're going to benefit Law as well. But, ultimately, with more benefits for him also come more threats. And again, I think Law is just going to be one of the hardest decks to build, because if you're going to take advantage of a lot of that new package, you have to cut some of the old package, right? I'm thinking you probably have to drop Nami, you probably have to drop a lot of your Straw Hats, so your searchability goes down. So I think the ceiling of the deck goes up, but the consistency goes down a little bit.
Yeah, I think again, this tier list is sort of like a consolidated tier list of all of our individual tier lists that we had. So
sure.
like a Will of DDT tier list, and I think Red Green Law is the one card that we had the longest discussion on where to actually place. Some had it in S, some had it in high A, some had it in low A.
Yeah.
So finding that balance, again, it like varies between the player, and I think this is going to be one deck that we're really gonna have to see where it ends up being.
For sure.
And another thing to take note, as you guys see us add more decks onto the tier list, the way you want to read this is the deck further to the left within a tier is higher ranked than those that are going further to the right.
Right. We're going to try to tier the tiers as well. All right, so next up we have got Red Green Luffy. I'm gonna let you lead this one, Irrelevant. I know you tried to make this guy work in OP1. Is he going to work in OP2?
I mean, he's really fun. Rallying or setting a rested card active and attacking multiple times is always a fun mechanic in every game that you play. Attacking multiple times is just a really fun time. It's just one of those things. You look at every other leader, you look at every other deck. You're in the colors of red green, and you have the chance to play Law instead of Luffy. So it's one of those things. I definitely think it's more of like a meme tier. Definitely fun, but not really that competitive. Yeah.
And not to say that it can't do well. I mean, it is also getting some more support with the new green Straw Hat film cards.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a lot of support, but even then, it's not the best. I mean, like one of the best combos you could have gotten out of Red Green Luffy was unblockable 5-cost Luffy, swinging once, restanding, swinging again.
Right.
The new Luffy that's coming out, it's 7 costs, right? So it doesn't fall within the tier of being able to access his effect. But I mean, some of the other Straw Hats can. So it's just one of those tiers it's one of those leaders that's awkward. It's good, it's cool when it pops off. Man, does it pop off? It feels good. But like we were saying, can it do what it wants to do consistently? And I don't think it can.
Yeah, agreed. Like you said, it's just a lot of the best cards that it has available to it don't work with the effect. So yeah, I think C tier is pretty accurate for this one. All right, moving on, we have Kozuki Odin, my boy. We are going to put Odin in a B tier. I know some of the people at this channel think that he's probably a little worse than that, but I fought for that B, guys. I think Odin's a solid deck, and part of the reason that he gets better next set is because we have a lot more Wano support coming out, right? We have our 8-cost Odin, so I feel like the deck was missing a top end before. It finally has a top end now. And yeah, I mean, that effect of getting 2 Dawn active, it's just like you have more things to use it now for, right? Like the 8-cost Odin, he can swing twice. You can use your leader to get back some of those Dawn to, for those extra swings. There's just more to use it with now. Overall, obviously, with Wano, with Kinemon coming out for Wano, like that is definitely going to be the deck to play. But I think Odin's definitely gotten a lot more viable at set 2.
Yeah, I mean, Odin, I think, is one of those, you love it or you hate it type decks. But I think with so many aggressive or, removal very niche leaders, Odin's one of the few utility leaders that lets you extend the game and, play things a lot more uniquely than you want to. So I think of all the leaders on this list, Odin probably has the highest potential to move up.
For sure. Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. I think again, we'll have to see how the meta shakes out. Any of these could be changing, but these are just our predictions for what we think will do well, and what we think is going to do well specifically in the U.S. Right. All right. So now we have Doflamingo, a favorite of all blue players for OP1. Bia as the Doflamingo guy in our group. What are you thinking about this guy set 2?
Again, love Dofi. It's what I took all set 1, and the thing is, I'm gonna have to put it down to B. It was definitely A tier set 1. It's coming down to B because it's not changing.
Sure.
The deck is staying the same.
Exactly.
Right, and Ivankov is the new blue leader that not only can utilize the old blue cards, but also capitalize on this new support.
Right.
Right. I mean, there are some things that you can argue. Yeah, there's another Dofi. There's some 7 Warlords, but again, the deck isn't changing meaningfully enough to keep it at that top level right now compared to the new blue leader. So there's not really much to say about it. The deck stays the same. It's going to keep doing what it wants to. You can play it as it is and still do really well. But is it getting stronger and more consistent compared to other decks? I don't think so.
Yeah, no. I think what you pointed out is like a great point. Just overall for this tier list, things that don't change from last set are naturally going to kind of fall to the lower tiers, and things that have gotten some more support, like Odin, right? I would have ranked it much lower in set 1, but in set 2, I think it deserves a B just because it has access to a better package, which it's not really the case for Dofi. All right, moving on, we've got Blue Purple Kaido. So pretty confident this one's going to fall at C tier. We're going to probably put it at a high C, but we'll see how that shakes out when we fill out the rest of that tier. Irrelevant as our Blue Purple Kaido player, what are you thinking about this guy set 2?
As soon as OP1 came out, I saw Blue Purple Kaido, and I decided that's the deck that I'm trying to. And I tried so hard.
And you did pretty damn good.
Days and nights, so many sleepless nights have been
In the
spent
lab.
just in the lab trying to make it work. So many different variants, and it ends up working. But just the fact that it's so bad against red, almost instantaneously losing to red because it does have 4 life.
Right.
And you look, Zoro has his own tier now. And sneak peek, there are other red leaders and red decks that are going to be very prevalent. And I just don't see Blurple Kaido doing anything in this format. Sadly, I still will end up playing him. But after, 3 losses in a row, going to have to put him back away into the binder.
For sure.
Lord can't take that away from you, man. You put that time in. We'll tell you that.
Yeah. No. We saw it work. But like you said, I think its enemy gets stronger in the next set, and just by kind of by virtue of that, it's going to fall to the
Natural
wayside.
selection.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough out here, being weak to red. All right, so next up we have got Blue Purple Croc. So we're also going to put that at a C tier, and a couple of you mess around with this, right, Mujinator?
Yeah, I remember when OP1 first came out, I was really interested in this deck because, I'm a main purple player, Kaido player. I didn't want to make another Kaido with blue-purple, so I gravitated to the next best purple deck, which is Blue Purple Croc.
Right.
After building the deck, I realized it's really good at stalling out the game. It's really good at, keeping that draw power, keeping the hand advantage, using a lot of events. But at the end of the day, it had a really tough time closing out games.
Yeah.
It really struggled to keep a board presence. It didn't really have too many game-ending plays. It extended the game. It would survive long, but once it reached the end game, it didn't really do too much.
Yeah.
To be fair, it did get better with the film deck coming out.
Sure.
But I kind of think the support for what that deck wants to do stopped at the film deck.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not getting buffed in set 2.
Right.
So I think C tier is fair for it right now. But it with Douglas Bullet, the 8-drop, and Uta, the deck is definitely strong, and it's one of those decks, the right pilot can take it to the top. I would not be surprised seeing, Blurple Croc win a locals, or even, get top 60 and get yourself a chopper at a treasure cup. It's definitely there. Like, it's a high skill cap, high ceiling deck.
Yeah.
And I think it just needs the right person to crack the code on it.
Yeah.
That's not me. I don't think there's anybody in this room.
None of us.
But good luck to whoever tries.
I'll leave that to another channel.
Exactly.
All right, next up we have got King. Honestly,
my guy.
if we gave Zoro his own Zoro tier, I might argue that we give King his own King tier, guys.
Give it to him. Give it to
Way
him.
at the bottom.
I mean, this guy hasn't changed from OP1, and the rest of the decks have just.
And he doesn't need to. He does not need to change.
We've got a resident King player here.
So King holds a very special place in my heart. It's the very first deck I built on my own. Tried really hard to make King work, but then I realized it just doesn't. It's basically a vanilla on your board at all times. It doesn't really do too much. It's counteracting what you want to do as purple. The leader wants you to have 10 Don, but purple never wants you to have 10 Don. It's just a bad card. It's a bad card. I tried making the deck happen. I made a deck profile on it. I would never play the deck again.
I respect you for making it work. You just took us by surprise by just playing a ton of vanillas, but
Yeah.
ultimately, like you said, your leader was just
Once
a
the
5K.
element surprise is gone, the deck falls apart.
Yeah, it's just a 5K vanilla. Not that great. So, all right, guys. Next up, we've got a more spicy one. This is Whitebeard, and we are putting him at a high A. Whitebeard is going to be one of the decks to beat next format. And a lot of people would put this as an S tier, but ultimately we think that with the level of support he has right now, the fact that you're just taking life so quickly, right, is probably one of the reasons that it's going to be difficult to win in certain matchups. So, Bia, I know you want to play this deck next format. What are you thinking?
Oh man, this is that deck for me. I'm telling you guys to watch out and keep on the lookout for this deck profile and some gameplay videos on this deck in the channel, because this is all I'm going to be playing set 2. This is the character that I've been waiting for. He has tons of support. He's one of those decks that I think once people get used to playing him and understand the mechanics around absorbing life,
Right.
it's kind of like how Green wanted to play set 1, take a bunch of cards of life, you drop your major bodies, and then you keep control of the game.
Yep.
So I think once people learn that, I could honestly see this being S tier. I really could, which is why I think high A is fair.
Sure.
And one thing that we should keep in mind is that the reason, I think another reason he's so high is because Zoro's in a tier of his own, and this deck absolutely demolishes Zoro. Absolutely stomps Zoro, and if people want to play a lot of Zoro, you can bet money that you're going to be seeing a lot of Whitebeard decks.
Yeah.
Like I'm telling, like look at it. He's such a unique leader. 6 life, 6K power,
Card draw, extra card draw every turn.
extra card draw. I mean, until you run out of life, but
Sure.
still, I mean, it has so much. Like, no matter how you look at this, design, flaw, thematics, play, it's got it all. I think it's in a really good spot.
And you got to add on one thing. I think Red is really going to make use of those one-cost events,
Yeah.
those counter events,
Yeah.
those guard points, and those radical beams. Just go up in priority in that Whitebeard deck, and it's so much efficiency, so much value at such a low cost, and it's going to be really rough to get there.
I mean, it's disgusting. You drop your 9 cost Whitebeard, you buff your leader by 2K, who's already 1K more than everything else in the game. You now have an 8K leader, and then you're running out of life every single turn. So your Radical Beam is that 1 Don that you've got left after the 9 Whitebeard play. You're buffing him to like what 12K? I mean, nothing's getting over that guy. Like, he is so crazy strong that closing out that game is really difficult. Yeah. So I mean, like we said, I mean, as people learn to play him better, he's just gonna get scarier and scarier.
The tools are there.
For sure.
The tools are there.
For sure. All right, next up we've got Garp. I love him in concept, man, but red and black just don't really offer anything special together. I mean, his effect is cool. I misread it, personally. I thought that it was just a once per turn effect, but he actually does not say once per turn. So every time you're equipping a Don to something, you're minusing the cost of something on your opponent's side of the board, which seems really good in theory, but we've seen some of our folks here at Willow DDT try this deck out, and it honestly just seems a little bit lackluster. Again, the red and black don't have any synergy in particular, and it seems like you're honestly just getting 4 life to play black.
Yeah, like it feels weird because, like you said, there's no synergy involved. Yeah, it's reducing cost, but nothing in red really involves removing cards
You don't
with
scale
reduced
off the cost, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, at that point, it just feels like it's going to be a black deck with some red in it.
Yeah.
Because what is red really going to do with reduced cost?
He's a good black leader.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There was no reason to splash red in there, at least not at this point, because there's no red cards that synergize with, like you guys have been saying. I don't want to keep hearing it, but he's a good black leader.
Right.
But at that point, if you're going to play a good black leader, why start off with one less life?
Exactly.
Right? Smoker's obviously the better choice.
Exactly. No, great effect, but ultimately you're running 4 life for no real benefit.
It's just that Garp's effect that you can use him a lot for not having to run any of the other black cards that reduce the cost. You can pretty much use him as the only way to reduce costs, and then red can kind of fill in the gap that black does not have a whole lot of card draw right now, and red has a decent amount of searchers in Dadan and Nami. So I'm thinking maybe red could be used to fill in the gap that black has about discarding cards, while Garp can fill in the gap of not needing any of the card reduction costs, which is the only way I can see Garp working.
No,
that's,
for sure.
that's a really good point. That's
Yeah.
a really good point. I see, I agree with Nashax there, and I see that getting better once the black Luffy structure deck comes out, where there's black cards that Nami will be able to search. Because, I mean, in a deck like red-black, Nami could whiff a lot more often, right?
Sure.
Because there's no black cards that she's picking up.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I like the effect a lot. That's the thing about this leader. Like, it's weird. It feels weird putting him in C tier because he's got a really great effect, honestly, in theory. It's just the deck in practicality doesn't work out right now, but as we go on, it's probably going to get better. So let's see where it goes. All right, next up, guys, we've got Kinemon. This is a fan favorite in Japan. We're going to throw it in S tier because, again, like we said earlier when we were talking about Odin, Wano's getting a ton of support, and Kinemon is just a monster early game.
Yeah, I know we've had a discussion, Anonymous and I, about which is going to be a better Wano deck. Is it going to be Odin or is it going to be Kinemon?
Yep.
I know we have a bet going. When set 2 comes out, we're going to build our separate decks. I just know Kinemon is just more consistent. You know, you get that turn 1 Okiku, and then even if you lose a board, you have that extra leader blade to just have high efficiency. Get, like you even told me yourself, get Odin out, the character Odin out super early on.
Yep.
Just 1 cost less. It's just so much efficiency and consistency to it.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd take it even a step further than you guys and say Kinemon is probably going to be the most consistent green deck. It's just that leader. I mean, with the introduction of the 4-cost Yamato
Yep.
and the 8-drop Odin.
Odin, yeah.
I mean, I feel like Kinemon right now uses those cards better than the Odin leader.
Agreed.
Sure.
So I think Kinemon's going to be, for set 2, what Law was for set 1. That's my prediction. I think he's going to be that really oppressive deck, and the better the player is, or the more time a player puts into that deck, they're just going to soar with it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, again, I've had this argument with Mujinator for a bit. I kind of, I have to see it. Ultimately, like, Japan has given us the proof that it's a good deck. I want to see it in practice over here because it does rely on some luck, right? You do need that Okiku in hand if you want the turn 1 Okiku. And, like, you do need to have the right things in hand because if you spend Dawn searching for them, then you no longer have the Dawn to play them anymore off of his effect. And also, his effect's only live if you've got 1 character on board. So, like, late game, I feel like he might not be as good just because, like, he kind of requires you to be in a bad position if you actually want to play off of his effect. But for the most part, I mean, the early game advantage that you get off of it is just undeniable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absurd. So, yeah, I mean, we're comfortable S tier. And, yeah, that's that. Probably going to be one of the best decks of the next format. All right, next up we've got Blue-Green Sanji. Blue-Green's another interesting color combo. And by interesting, I mean it doesn't really have much synergy. And so we're going to put it in C. Curious if you have anything to say about that or relevant.
I have nothing to say about this. It's very straightforward. It's very good for vanillas.
It's a vanilla deck.
It's a vanilla deck. I mean,
Yeah.
It's
we
this set's king.
yeah, King. I mean, Uta is a vanilla deck. We know how Uta turned out.
Right.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
I'll
I
probably
can see
end
it
up-
being fun.
I'll play 1, maybe 2 games on the sim
Yeah.
of it.
I'll make the deck with some extra bulk.
Yeah,
if I have
sure.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's about
I
it.
think we're disrespecting a little bit too much. We are getting some pretty sick blue and green vanillas. I mean, you got the 6-drop 8K Mihawk. So again, it could pop off.
Sure.
Right? But again, is it more consistent than other decks? No way.
For sure.
Right? You can have some crazy games and just really smash some of the top decks.
Yeah.
But how often is that going to happen?
Right.
I think another thing is like this deck doesn't really like scream excitement
No.
to me.
No.
It
And I'm
doesn't
not.
seem-
I'm not
yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
Let's
I
just say
agree.
that.
All right, so next up we've got Ivankov. This one's definitely going to be a top contender, so we're going to put this in a high A tier. Yeah, I mean, what do you guys say about
I
this?
remember when we were when I was making my tier list, I actually put Ivankov in S tier. I think we all kind of talked about it, agreed that it's in like mid high A tier.
Yeah.
The only reason why I put it in S tier is just because of two things. The first thing is the big elephant in the room is the Luffy Ivankov combo.
Oh, yeah.
You play Ivankov, you get Luffy on the board, and that's
Big
just a crazy combo. Like,
Two
that-
7K bodies.
And that too, Luffy has a crazy on-play ability that can happen right away, and it's so much pressure right on turn 7 on curve.
It's crazy.
Second is Deathwing. Right when you see Deathwing on blue, just blue in general, any blue deck just gets stronger with Deathwing.
Yeah.
3 cost, 6,000 counter, and it also has the bounce ability, and it also has a trigger of returning a 7 cost or higher. Like, that is just a stacked card that, with an already strong deck, having that in it is just a big deal to me.
Right. And it's, us putting it in mid A tier is just compromise. Some people had it in S, some people had it in A, and no one was wrong.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, you are not wrong in where you put this deck because it's one of those, high skill cap decks that because it's incredibly technical. It requires you to keep yourself at a low hand advantage, but it lets you cycle through your deck to find the pieces that you want.
Yep.
No other deck so far in One Piece lets you cycle through your deck as quickly as this does.
For sure.
You're not really worried what your top bottom of the deck is because you're going to filter through pretty quickly.
Right.
You're more than likely going to see the pieces you want.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean it's kind of about the pilot. It's a lot like Dofi. It's I feel like blue is just kind of that color.
Yeah.
It creates these leaders with these really weird mechanics that play differently than anything else you've seen in the game. But yeah, I mean Ivankov for set 2 just seems like Dofi on steroids basically. So we're gonna leave that in A tier, and moving on, we've got Magellan, Mujinator, our purple guy. What do you got to say about this guy?
Magellan, solid B tier. It is going to be the premier mid-range deck of this format.
Sure.
After doing some testing on it on the sim, the deck is really good when you hit it on curve. Once this deck reaches the late game, it falls off pretty dramatically.
Gotcha.
But the good thing about this deck is, and the reason why I say it's the premier mid-range deck, is because it forces your opponent to stay mid-range as well. It's going to prevent that purple matchup, the purple kind of matchup from reaching his Tendan. It's going to prevent that black deck from reaching Kuzan. It's going to prevent the Zoro from getting more advantage and just putting down on all his low-cost units just because of the Magellan character. And again, just because it's purple, it has access to Hell's Judgment, which is undeniably one of the
Insane.
strongest counter events coming out this set.
Printed.
And, the leader, you're going to be using the leader ability all the time. It's pretty much going to be 6K almost every turn.
Yep.
So you have that going for you. Give it 1 down, give it 7K, give it a magic number. It's just going to be very straightforward, mid-range, play in that 5-6 down range at all times. Any extra you allocate down. And just put the aggression on, put the pressure on early
Right.
game.
And it's a different type of control deck. I love control style decks, and it's the first deck. I want to say it's not the first card, but it's the first deck that manipulates the opponent's
Opponent's
Dom,
down,
which is really
exactly.
fun. It's
Yep.
really cool.
Yeah,
I like these really new gimmicks
Right.
that can be consistent. Right. I think putting it in B tier, it's more of a question mark because we haven't seen it yet.
Right.
Right. So getting more play testing, getting a larger sample size, I can another deck I can see move up.
For sure.
Yeah, I think like Mujinator, Magellan is also one of the decks that I really want to play. It's simply in the B tier because it doesn't have a late game, and it doesn't have a really early game. Really, it's just straight in that middle. It's trying to make sure the opponent also stays in that middle, and if you can't get the advantage that way, that's where the inconsistency of it comes in. You're probably losing the game, but it looks like a lot of fun. I can't wait to play it.
For sure.
Also has some of the nicest alt arts, man.
Oh
Doesn't
yeah,
hurt.
Magellan character
Doesn't
altar.
hurt.
It's
Ooh.
clean. All right, guys. Next up, we have probably one of the hottest takes on this list. So, despite how this guy has been performing in Asia, we are going to be putting Z in pretty high A tier. So Z basically is just black and purple. For me, as a law player, again, I hate purple. Black has some of the stuff I hate about purple. This guy's just absolute cancer. I mean, he has access to the cost reduction effects of black, and he has access to the KO effects of purple, right? Also, all of your top end means nothing to Z. He's just going to use your black cards to reduce the cost, and then you're going to be able to use the purple cards to kill those reduced cost opponent's cards without having to discard. That's the downside of black, right? Is that you have to discard. Z allows you to use the black part where you lower cost, and then the purple part where you just kill things without having to discard any hand advantage.
So Irrelevant is our resident expert on Z, and I want him to talk as much about this this leader and deck as much as possible. And I'm telling you guys, once you guys see this pop off, credit's going to go to him. But just as a victim of purple,
Yep.
now imagine this. There's going to be a deck that can run 10-drop Kaido and 10-drop Kuzan.
Yep.
Just,
Well,
that's the world we're heading to.
So, let me give everyone a quick rundown of this. I've been playing this game since Super Pre-release. I've never had more fun playing a deck than Purple Black Z. And honestly, it's not close. This is the most I've enjoyed this game. Before we speak, so the 10-drop Kaido can't be played in this deck because it's not Animal Kingdom leader.
10-drop Kaido only works if you have an Animal
Right,
Kingdom
right.
leader.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and here's
Sorry,
the
guys.
thing.
That's how much I hate purple.
Here's the thing.
Don't read the cards.
Ironically, after playing multiple games of Z, like on the sim, I played pretty much every other color, every other deck. There's two things that I'm actually afraid of. One is, red rushing you down. One thing, obviously, it's a dual color. You only have 4 life. You can get rushed down.
Right.
And Zoro and Whitebeard occasionally as well, if it gets the draws, if it gets those one-cost events, obviously it's kind of hard to get through. But those 2 decks, and the only other card in the entire game that I am afraid of is that 10-drop Kaido.
Mm-hmm.
And because there is no other way any deck is dealing with your 10-drop Kuzan. There's no way. You don't swing with it. It stays there. It's a constant threat. And your opponent is forced to just put cards knowing that they're going to be removed next turn.
Yeah.
And I see green, I don't sweat. I see blue, I don't sweat. Because the removal on this deck is so damn high.
Yep.
I might be missing something when the set actually comes out in North America. We get like games in like locals and tournaments against like actual players. Maybe I feel different, but I don't really think I will. I'm not here saying it's in a tier of its own. It's in that mid-low A tier, but my God, this deck has a good matchup against everything outside of the 2 things that I've said, and I just cannot wait to play the hell out of this deck.
No, the board clear on this deck is just disgusting. I mean, I've seen it myself. I've played those matches against you, and like you said, I mean, green is just putting down units to get them removed before they can ever attack. It's so nasty. All right, guys. So we will move on to our next leader here. We've got Smoker, and we're gonna put Smoker A tier. He's easily the best black leader that's coming out next set. I think we all here can agree that black's probably not really complete next set, but as far as black goes, I think Smoker is going to be your best option.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, he's just got a really consistent effect. You're going to lower something by 1, and then, if there's a 0 cost on the board, he's going to gain 1k. He's kind of like Magellan, but for black. Constant big swings, and again, just the most consistent style of play for black.
Yeah, definitely a predict and see
Yeah.
type of deck. I don't think we have much to say. We're gonna have to wait until it comes out and see how it performs.
Well, it's more so like see how the color plays, right? I mean, Smoker is still definitely the best black leader.
For
It's
sure.
just we need to see how. It's just the most under-resourced color compared to this, because every other color has 2 sets worth of cards.
Right.
Black doesn't.
Right. Come OP3, we'll see if he jumps. All right, guys, we've got Luffy, the classic. At this point, I mean, Luffy's just a B tier, only because, not because his effect is bad, but because it's just a little lackluster. I mean, you're getting the 1 Dawn, it's good, but it's a little outpaced by things like Zoro and Whitebeard, I think.
I'm gonna go against the grain. I'm gonna go against the grain a little bit here. I think Luffy's still gonna be very high because, just in terms of consistency, Luffy's still gonna be able to do what it wants to do, much like Zoro. Just Zoro's just gonna get a lot better at doing what he wants to do. Luffy's still gonna be able to do. He still has access to the same card Zoro does.
Right.
Yeah. The Vistas. I mean, you don't really run Whitebeard in here. I think Luffy still wants to run the Shanks. It's just. Diable Jambe is still a good card.
Yeah.
Right? Diable Jambe is just still a great card. And any leader that lets you use that,
Right.
it's still going to be pretty strong. So I think, set 2 is going to be, for people that might not be able to get a whole bunch of cards, Luffy's still a safe leader to bring to your locals and still have a good time and still do really well.
Yeah, agree. I think you said it best right there. He is safe. I don't think he really changes much in terms of his game plan in OP2, and just because of the bigger variety, I think he falls to B maybe, but he can very easily be an A tier leader. I see your point. Next up, we've got Kid, and Kid is still one of the GOATs. We're going to put him in S tier. Being able to attack with a unit that is never going to leave your board twice every turn, or I mean not every turn, but being able to attack twice with your leader is just, it's insane. I mean, irrelevant. You were probably the biggest proponent of Kid being an S, so I mean, what do you got to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll try to keep it short and simple. Just the ability to rally or set your rested card active, again, in any game is so strong. And in this game is extremely strong. Like you said, he cannot be removed even if he attacks. I just don't have it in me to put him anywhere other than S.
For sure. And as more green cards come out, that may change, but I think for set 2, he's still a top contender.
But I also think he's not going to be as strong as he was set 1. Set 1 was really Kid's time to shine.
Sure.
With Black entering the meta, 8-cost Kid is a lot easier to get rid of.
That's true.
8-cost Kid is what made Kid... Kid's leader ability is fantastic. But once you get 8-cost Kid, that's what made him S tier.
Yeah.
Set 1. Now that 8-cost Kid is more vulnerable, he can still... he's not as great. Other decks have a better chance.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, next up, we've got Blue Croc. Frankly, I mean, I don't think this guy's really changing. It's pretty much the same thing you said for Dofi, right? I mean, Dofi didn't change at all from set 1, and he was really good. Croc doesn't change at all from set 1, and he was kind of okay, and he's still just going to be okay, so we're going to put him at a C tier. Next up, we've got Kaido, and Kaido's still pretty damn strong, so we're going to put him mid A tier. Mujinator, resident Kaido player, what you got to say?
Again, this is another part where I kind of don't agree with the tier list. I stand firm that Kaido, as it is right now in OP2, even OP1, I think he's at least low S tier.
I agree.
The only reason why I say that is just because first it has access to Onigashima, one of the strongest early game plays that you can have in any deck.
Sure.
Every turn he's setting himself up an extra turn.
Yep.
There have been times where I'm watching games happen where, it's blue versus green, or green versus green, and there's this board filled with so many strong units. And I'm thinking to myself, man, that's crazy. I'm just going to play a 10-drop Kaido. The fact that that card exists, you always have that self-destruct button in hand in case you ever need it. That in itself just tells me that, listen, this card can contend with anything if you just draw and you high roll.
For sure.
The only reason why I understand you guys put it in the lower tier is just because it is just so hyper reliant on Onigashima.
Yep.
It just, again, we're focused on consistency here.
Yep.
And let's be completely honest. If you don't draw the Onigashima, your chances of winning drops by at least 80%.
Oh, yeah.
I 100% agree with everything Mujinator just said, except until we get some stage removal. Onigashima is just going to run the game, and objectively, Kaido is still the best purple leader. There's not a better, the new purple leaders can't use the cards that made Kaido great,
Yep.
but Kaido can use all the strong purple cards that's coming out in the next set.
That's very true.
Yeah, and then even in addition to that is just when you're playing against Kaido, it just feels really bad because you're playing with just one less life, just because of his leader ability. If you're playing a dual colored leader against Kaido, you're essentially playing with 3 life because once you get down to 2 life, Kaido's just gonna use his tried and true signature move.
Yep.
You just stack 7 down on the leader, swing for 12, minus a 7 down, and swing for 12 with whatever big body he has on the board. As long as that leader is on the board, your opponent is essentially playing with 1 less life. and that in itself is just such a strong.
He's
thing
just
to have.
he's going to be the best purple leader for a while.
Yeah.
There's just no way around it.
Yep. Speaking of purple leaders, we've got Shanks up next, and yeah, I think D tier is fair for this one, guys. He's pretty bad. He only works with the film deck, and the
Yeah.
film deck's pretty bad.
Yeah, not much to say about it. Again, it's a good entry level. You know, if you miss out on some cards you want to play with the deck,
Right.
you know, the film deck is out. But other than that, I don't think it's too viable.
Agreed. Sakazuki, pretty bad. This guy is easily the worst black leader. I mean, you know, again, Nashax has tried it out, and there is some consistency to be had in the fact that, you know, your leader can handle your KO effects as opposed to having to spend characters as resources. But it's just, I mean, you're spending, what, 3 Dawn and a discard? I mean, that's a steep cost. It's just a bad black leader.
You own this card because it comes in the structure deck. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
No one's looking for this leader.
Right, for sure. And last up, we have Uta.
I think we have to do
Yeah,
something special for Uta.
I was going to put her in the king tier, but
Oh, two rows below.
Yeah.
I think we have all the Digimon cards,
Let's put a toilet there.
and then we have Uta.
there we go. Yeah, I mean, Uta, it's just,
I don't think we even need to speak.
we
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
We don't. And with
It's with
that,
an I, but it's okay.
Uta's there to just help facilitate you getting Sunny-kun
Yep.
and your Ben Beckmans and all that stuff.
Yeah. Again, you only have Uta because you were able to get those promo packs. And you say, hey, I have an Uta card. Let's try to make a fun deck out of it. And then you realize it's just really bad. And then you
Yeah.
take it apart.
I truly cannot believe we spent this much time on Uta.
yeah.
Um,
All right, guys. Well, that is the tier list. Again, you know, take this with a grain of salt. We still have to see how the meta shakes out. We are going to be playing locals a ton. We even signed up for a regionals tournament lately, so we're going to be seeing how that goes. We're really excited to see how OP2 shakes out. This is just our predictions, again, for what's going to be popular in the U.S. just based on what we've seen in the sim.
And at the end of the day, again, regardless of what you heard us say, play what you want to play. Try out all the leaders, right?
Yeah.
Be able to take what you heard for every, like, we put our time into all the leaders that have been out, so we can have an opinion on it, right? Form your own opinion, play the decks, have fun. That's what One Piece is about.
sure.
Prove us right when some of the decks suck, and prove us wrong when some of the decks actually never prove us wrong. Just keep coming back.
All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed this, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.